Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Tonight, the government is trying to decide which financial institutions to protect. I'll explain what we really should be trying to save. Also, more and more people feel like they've lost their voices. Are there signs that this could be the summer of rage? And Phoenix is the kidnapping capital of the U.S. Police tonight will tell you exactly what they're doing to turn things around. Plus, this.
We're going to seek and we're going to destroy this candidacy of Sarah Palin.
Exclusive footage tonight from a new documentary featuring Sarah Palin taking on the mainstream media that took her on and did their best to take her out. We've got the tapes. If you believe this country is great, but progressive fascists are trying to destroy it piece by piece, this is your wake-up call. Come on, follow me. Progressive fascists. Oh, they're going to be writing about that in their little basements of their mom's house. I got a new blog. Hello, America. Here's tonight's hot list. These are the stories that the mainstream media is covering. AIG is going back to the public trough for the 4th time now. Yeah, that's the insurance company that we bought, that it's going to be such a great investment for us. Just days before it's expected to announce $60 billion of losses in the 4th quarter, they want more. Plus, the air traffic controller who talked to Captain Sully moments before the miracle landing in the Hudson River says he thought everybody on board was headed for a death sentence. And Bourbon Street showed no signs of a recession today as partygoers celebrated their way through the streets of New Orleans for Mardi Gras. An infant and 4 others were shot along the route. Fantastic. Now, everybody is trying to talk about saving the banks and we're going to nationalize, but personally, I think the thing that they're missing is the thing that we really should be saving. You know, in order to save the banks or the big 3 or any other company, we must first rescue something else from the brink of collapse, and that's our values. Despite what Ben Bernanke or Tim Geithner will tell you, if we don't have a real liquidity problem in the country, that's not the real problem. There's no real shortage of cash. We can make more. It's like the donuts. But there's a major shortage of a currency much more important than the almighty dollar, and that is honor and integrity and honesty. Last night, J.P. Morgan announced a catastrophic cut in their dividend from 38 cents a share to 5 cents a share. Guess what? Right after the news hit, their stock went up. Excuse me? I personally believe it's because investors are rewarding honesty and integrity. They don't believe any of these people. And when they cut the dividend, they're like, okay, maybe that's the bottom for those guys. Maybe now it's all out in the open. It's not always easy to do the right thing. Take Microsoft, for instance. I don't know if you've heard this story, but they recently were forced to lay off about 1,400 people. The first layoffs in their history. But unfortunately, due to an accounting glitch, which I hope wasn't happening with their software, they overpaid severance to 25 workers by an average of $4,000 to $5,000. Then they shorted another 24 people. Well, Microsoft found out and figured it all out, and they immediately paid the people that they had underpaid, and then they called up the people that had been overpaid by $5,000 and said, hey, can you send us some of that money back? Well, so far this story, common sense, right? What would you do? Well, today we learned that Microsoft has now decided to let those people that they overpaid by $4,000 to $5,000 keep the extra money. Why? Because somebody sent that letter to the media. And Microsoft didn't want to be seen in the media as asking workers that they just fired to pay back $4,000 to $5,000. Now, some would argue that this makes sense from a business standpoint. Bad PR, it's pricey, $125,000 is just a tiny fraction of their almost billion-dollar advertising budget. So it's completely inconsequential to them unless you happen to care about values. Regardless of what Microsoft says, those employees should give the extra money back. How do you sleep at night? It's not your money. It's the right thing to do. It was never yours in the first place. How did you not look at your check and say, wait a minute, you've overpaid me by? I mean, shame on you. And shame on Microsoft. Shame on you, Microsoft, for putting public relations above principles. You know, Nobody said that living with honor and integrity would be easy, but the true test of character is not only what decisions you make when nobody's looking, but apparently today, now, it's also the decisions you make because everyone is looking. And tonight, all eyes are going to be on President Obama as he yaps about the state of the economy. Well, now he has a choice to make. He can talk about the stimulus package and all the great things he's going to do for individuals, or he can take a deep breath and look us all right in the eye and admit that no financial recovery will ever be possible in this country until we first recover our principles. This morning, I kind of lost my mind just a little bit on Fox and Friends, and I want to play this because this is where this opening monologue came from, was this moment on Fox and Friends.
But Glenn, the foundation of our country is our financial services industry. If that goes kaput, we are all screwed.
And all our money's the backbone of our country is not our financial institutions.
Yes, it is.
It is not. It is the American people. I do not believe in our government. I do not believe in the banks. I believe in the people. What about the people fix the problem? I apologize to Steve Doocy this morning because I wasn't taking it out on him. I was just so frustrated that, gosh, man, believe in people, not the banks. What are our principles? What do we really, truly believe in? We should believe in one another. Now, the problem of nationalizing the banks. Everybody's going to talk to you about what we're losing, but what principles will we be ignoring? In Washington is Jonah Goldberg, syndicated columnist and author of Liberal Fascism. Hello, Jonah.
Hey, Glenn, great to be here.
Thank you very much. By the way, America, I know I've told you this a million times before. If you haven't read this book, Liberal Fascism, you should. You need to read it. Put it on your must-read list. Okay, Jonah. By the way, I haven't received a check kicking back to me or anything. I'm just saying.
I'm going to mow your lawn for the rest of my life.
Okay. Here's the thing. Where do I have this wrong, Jonah? On the selling out of principles, it's almost, and you know it through liberal fascism, it's almost always look over here, look over here, look over here, but it's what is over here that really counts.
Well, you know, it's funny. We weren't originally going to talk about this, but it occurred to me while I was listening to you talk. There was a wonderful study that came out a year or two ago from the World Bank, which was about intangible capital. And it found that if you added up all of our factories, all of our industry, all of our commodities, oil, gas, all that kind of stuff, all the physical stuff that makes an economy, it adds up to less than 20% of our wealth. You're right. Our real wealth is in our intellectual capital. It's in the things we know, the rule of law, our values, our open society, our education, our accumulated knowledge. These are the things that have real value.
And all
that's
of
why
that
countries around the world that live off of commodities are poor.
Right, and all of the stuff that you're talking about all breaks down when we can no longer trust each other. You can't have a civil society. I think that's right. Yeah. Okay. So let me talk to you about nationalizing the banks a little bit, because most people don't know what this means. What exactly does it mean to the average schmo if the government starts to take over our banks?
Well, it means that banks, for some average schmoes, it might actually be great news if they couldn't have gotten a loan back when banks were actually giving loans based on your ability to pay it back or how good your idea was, really? Or something like that. You know?
So like 1987, back then when people, I mean, Jonah, we haven't been getting it on our ability to buy, to be able to pay a loan back for quite a while.
No, I agree. I think the problem is when people talk about nationalization, we talk about a lot of different things. If we're talking about a bank going bankrupt and going into FDIC receivership and being restructured, that's kind of nationalization, but it's also kind of not. If we're talking about turning Citibank and Bank of America and these places into Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's, where basically Congress gets to use these things as government by proxy, which is not socialism, right? That Newsweek cover was idiotic when it says we're all socialists now. According to fascist or corporatist theory, all it is, it's the mixture of big business and government in bed together. The analysts today define nationalization as when the government only has a 40% stake in banks. It means they get to push banks around and tell them what kind of loans to make, how they let politics and ideology corrupt everything.
Okay, so now we can explain this. If you look at GM, as soon as they got the money, they said, oh, no, GM's going to be free to make all the kind of cars that Americans want, the green cars. Americans don't want the green cars. They wanted to buy the trucks that GM was making. That's why GM was making them. Now what they really mean is Now we have control of these industries. Now we'll have control of the banks, so we can push the agenda. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, follow this. I've been trying to think a little bit more on what is the next step. So the first step is nationalizing the banks. The next step would be to free those companies up to be able to do what's politically correct, give these things or build these kind of cars, etc., which will not change our behavior. We'll continue to go and buy the car we want. We'll just buy it from another country, which the next step then would be the government saying, well, that's politically incorrect to buy that, so we're going to put a tariff on that. We'll put a big tax on that, which is protectionism, and this is why it won't work.
No, I think that's right. It's like the proverbial bump in the rug. You know, you can push it down here, but it's going to pop up someplace else. And, you know, if Barack Obama wants to pass a law that says Detroit is now going to sell cars that operate on 100% unicorn manure, I think that would be wonderful, right? But it ain't going to work, and the market is going to figure out that it doesn't work, and consumers aren't going to go around buying their unicorn manure-powered cars. You know, and it's going to ripple through the system.
When I said I open up the show, and I know people are like, oh my gosh, progressive fascism, liberal fascism, what are you talking about? Blah, 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 blah. It is really what George Carlin talked about, that fascism will come to America with a happy face. Is there any way that this ends well in nationalization?
Well, the good news is that the market sell-off yesterday, which was a direct referendum on what was coming out of Washington, scared the bejeebus out of most of Washington today. And you've now seen the congressional Democrats, Steny Hoyer, people from the White House, Ben Bernanke today, saying that, whoa, 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 who said anything about nationalization?
Oh,
well, they did.
Yeah. And, it's like Obama doesn't have a phone in the Oval Office. Can somebody get Chris Dodd on the phone? I mean, tell Congress to shut up. All right, Jonah, I've got to run.
No, I agree.
I got to run, but thank you so much. We have a special guest, Ron Paul, joining us here in just a second. First, I want to play. I want to play a piece. In fact, hello, Congressman. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Very good. I want to play a piece for the American people, something that was said at Columbia University at a dinner on Friday. Finally got a hold of the audio and the video of this. This is George Soros and what he said on Friday on how bad things are at Columbia University.
The seriousness of the crisis cannot be exaggerated. The closest comparison that I can think of is actually the collapse of the Soviet system.
Okay. So George Soros is now, and I've got something on this tomorrow, America, that you just don't want to miss. The collapse of the Soviet system is how serious this is. What scares me about this, Congressman, is I know there are people all around the world that are licking their chops at, well, wait a minute, if things collapse with capitalism, we're going to have to restart it. Can you tell me, you know, what is the G20 doing? What is happening around the world with Gordon Brown, who will be in Congress next week, that says, hey, I think we should have a new New Deal, but a global New Deal?
Yeah, they're frantic and they're panicking, and you have the central banks from the G7, I'm sure, are meeting constantly to plan the next monetary structure. We had a major structure formed in Bretton Woods in '44. It collapsed in '71. We've had the dollar reserve standard from '71 up until last year. That's collapsed. It's gone. It's done. And they have to have a new monetary standard. And they're planning behind the scenes. We're not entitled to know anything about it. Under the law, they don't have to tell us a thing. But believe me, they're planning. They're panicky because they don't have an easy answer. But there are major changes going on. I've argued this case for years, that we were working on destroying our whole system the way we were operating.
Okay, so Congressman, I mean, no offense, because I think you're the one guy who has had this right from the very beginning. But the problem is, if you say stuff like this, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. And I can't get, I mean, there's nobody in the media that is reporting this. There's nobody that's talking about this stuff, but it only makes common sense. If people know that the end is coming of the system that we have, and I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not saying that we're all going to, you know, cats and dogs are going to be sleeping with each other, et cetera. So what I'm saying is there's going to be a change coming. Rupert Murdoch said that nations will be redefined in this period. You know that people at the global level are looking at it and saying, okay, what's it going to look like? Where can we find out? Where do we start to look?
Well, you should look to the Congress, but they don't pay much attention either. And there will be a realignment, and there's a struggle going on with us who believe that we should have national sovereignty. We should be out of the UN, out of the World Bank, out of the IMF, and no world government. But that is the movement that we're going in. That is the direction that we're going in. But others are planning to go one step further. They weren't satisfied with Bretton Woods. They weren't satisfied with the dollar standard. Now they want to probably modify the special drawing rights of the IMF, which they tried and didn't fail. But they want to control capital, and they want to control the natural resources of the world. So, and they're not nationalistic at all. They believe in world government, and they're more out in the open now than they were 25 years ago.
Here's the problem. I mean, everybody will say, oh, that Glenn Beck, he's a conservative. He just loved the Bush administration. No, I didn't. And while I am a businessman myself and I like big business, I don't have a problem with Walmart. I do have a problem with people that look at our country as a market. And that's what's happening. These global corporations are just looking at people as consumers and a market, so they don't give a flying crap about our Constitution or anything else. What's good for business? How do you stop that?
I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I concentrate on making sure nobody is big because they get a special benefit, either the bankers or the corporations, the international corporations, because inevitably they get benefits. They get tax subsidies of all sorts, they get contracts, and they are protected, and they get all kinds of benefits from government. When you're big for that reason, let's argue that Walmart got big because they satisfied the consumer. We don't want to come down hard on bigness, per se. Bigness in capitalism is good as long as they got there by the consumer voting confidence in that particular business.
Yeah. Congressman, thank you very much. By the way, America, I mean, I hope I'm nuts. I mean, really, you've never met anybody who hopes he's wrong more than I am, or I do. The solutions are going to be presented as gigantic and global. And the answer is going to be local. The answer is going to come from you and your local community and your state, not the globe. That's where a nightmare is coming. All right, Mexico's violence is spilling over the border. What are the police in Phoenix, Arizona doing to stop the narco gangs and the hundreds of kidnappings every single year?
Glenn Beck is brought to you by the UPS Store, mailbox services, and a whole lot more.
Has just gone down the tubes.
I am 100% upset.
We don't own America anymore. I'm checking out.
Well, you're not alone, and I'm going to prove it.
Glenn Beck. Give him 2 weeks, and he'll give you reason to believe in America again.
I've been telling you about the kidnap epidemic that is happening right in our own backyard. Phoenix, Arizona is America's kidnapping capital. It is the second worst city after Mexico City in the world. Sergeant Tommy Thompson is with the Phoenix Police Department now. Sergeant, how are you, sir?
Great, Glenn. How are you this afternoon?
I am very good. First of all, sir, I thank you for all of your hard work and all of the police officers there in Phoenix that are fighting, I think, against an unstoppable monster. Tell me what is going on in Phoenix.
Well, first of all, let me point out that right now in Phoenix, crime is down. Our homicide rate's down 24% over last year. We're dealing with the issue of kidnappings. Last year we had approximately 368. Well, that's not approximate, that's the number. One of the things I'd like to point out, because I've had a lot of calls from your viewers, that the victims in these crimes are not John Q. and Jane Q. Citizen, but they're in fact people that are actually involved in the criminal element themselves.
Now this is I know my audience, and it may make them even more crazy if they find out that these are not John Q. Citizen, but John Q. Illegal Citizen.
Well, a large percentage of them are illegal. But the thing that I'd like to point out, too, is they're involved in the criminal element. They're either involved in drug trafficking or human smuggling. Those are the victims that we find in these kidnappings.
All of them?
The vast majority of them. The vast majority.
How many are not?
A very small percentage, Glenn, are not involved in illegal crimes.
Okay.
And go ahead.
You know, Sergeant, look. I am a fan of the police. I think, I said this I think a couple of nights ago, our sheriff's department, our police department, our local law enforcement, along with our military, are going to save this country. They're going to save this country, because when things come to hell in a handbasket, God forbid they do, it's you guys that are going to have to hold it together with the help of citizens. So I mean, nothing bad to say. What I have a problem with are the people that are on top of you guys stopping us from enforcing the laws of the country, which is your problem. You have a problem with kidnapping? You know why you have a problem with kidnapping? You have a problem with frickin' kidnapping because people won't let us enforce the laws of illegal immigration. And so you've got all of these drugs coming across the border. You have the whole situation out of hand, and it's putting, quite frankly, not only our citizens, but it's putting people like you in danger every day. I'm sorry, but how can we help you, sir? There are a lot of people in America that would really like to make sure you guys don't have to deal with this crap.
Well, Glenn, right now you're helping us. You're getting the correct information out. As I said, by being able to explain who the victims of these crimes are, that they're involved in illegal activity, that's a start. To make sure that the citizens in our country understand that if they're not involved in illegal activity, especially in Phoenix, that they're not going to get kidnapped. By getting that message out and reassuring them.
You can't guarantee that. You can say the odds are, but I mean, what we're doing is it's like we're living in Prohibition ages with Al Capone and saying, well, if you're not part of. There were innocent people killed in Chicago at that time. There were innocent people getting kidnapped now, the vast majority, but we've got to get this element out of our cities. This is going to rot us from the inside. Agree or disagree?
Well, we're working to combat that, to make sure that that doesn't happen. You mentioned earlier this morning, we mentioned the fact that we have the HIKE squad. That's the Home Invasion Kidnapping Enforcement Squad. That involves local, state, federal partners. Since June, we've been able to arrest 148 people. That's 27 cells that are involved in kidnappings and home invasions. And with our prosecutor, Glenn, we've been able to get some very, very stiff sentences to send a message to those who would commit crimes on our streets that America is not the place to come to.
Is our new Department of Homeland Security, I don't want to put you in this position, let me just speculate. I don't think our Department of Homeland Security, new chief of Homeland Security, used to be your governor, is really going to be all that much of a help. She's the one who militarized the border in Arizona. It's my understanding there's more people that were militarized or were called up from the National Guard for the snowstorm in Maine than there were in the border. This is all a show in Washington, but to people like you, to people like me, and to people in Phoenix, it's real. The people in Texas, it's real. California, it's real. Can we please get somebody that would like to deal with the issues in Washington? Officer, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch again soon. It all comes back to principles and values. If it's not just about getting reelected, we can fix things. Principle number 5, if you break the law, you pay the penalty. Justice is blind, and no one is above it, no matter what the color of their skin is, whether it be white, brown, yellow, it doesn't matter. And here's a quick common sense test for you. What is the first phrase, the first word in the phrase illegal immigrant that nobody in the media ever seems to want to use anymore? Have you read the newspaper lately? How about the woman who, Chandra Levy, is that her name, that was killed in 2000 or 2001? Did you read the story where no, it was just an immigrant. It was an illegal alien. Can we please start calling them illegal aliens again? Case closed. You break the law, off to jail. You're going back home and you ain't coming back. And look at our 10th value, courage. Some people are fighting and dying, and we don't give a flying crap what your race is. Try to protect the border. Stand up for what is right, not for what is easy. But fighting for what is right does take that one value on our list, courage. Whew. Sorry, I'm a little excitable today. People have said that I am off base and everything else for a very long time, and I got to tell you something. I hope that I am. Unfortunately, there's another piece to the puzzle, something that's called the Summer of Rage. This is over in England. Is it coming our way? I'll explain next. If I told you that I don't drink coffee, would that surprise you?
I would be pretty shocked, I have to say. Are you doing okay there?
Hi, you know what it is? That is, nobody in the media seems to see that all of these stories are connected. That we could survive every single one of these by themselves. But as we just keep piling all of these things one on top of another, it's just insanity.
You're right, and they really are all part of a big picture.
We got to start looking at it differently. Okay.
You're bringing it together for folks, though. You are.
Oh, thank you very much. Patty, what's happening?
Just don't have a heart attack in the meantime. All right, in the news right now. The White House has just released the first excerpts from the president's address to the joint session of Congress tonight. President Obama's primetime address will feature a pitch for his economic plan, and a spokesman says he will offer a sober assessment of how things stand. The president will tell Americans, quote, "We will rebuild, we will recover, and the United States of America will emerge stronger than before." Make sure to watch Fox News Channel for that special event starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, a former president is about to embark on a lucrative international speaking tour. President George W. Bush just signed up to give a series of speeches starting next month. It will take him across America as well as Canada, Europe, and Asia. Bush surprised students today at the campus that will house his presidential library one day, Southern Methodist University in Dallas. He spoke at an introductory class on American government and politics. And the pilot who landed a passenger jet safely in a river last month testified before Congress earlier about the struggling airline industry. Chesley Sullenberger then sat down with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's also a member of the House Aviation Subcommittee. Sullenberger warned lawmakers that pay cuts are driving experienced pilots away from careers flying commercial planes. And those are your headlines. I'm Patty Ann Brown. Glenn Beck returns in a moment. But first, Brett Baer has a preview of what's ahead on Special Report tonight. Hey, Brett.
Hi, Patty Ann. Coming up, we'll preview President Obama's address to a joint session of Congress. Are the president's oratory skills more style than substance? And does his stimulus have a union label? Join me at 6 Eastern for a special report. Now back to Glenn Beck.
So, Brett, is there really anything that I mean, because I'll hang myself if I listen to this. If I hear Barack Obama say, "Oh, there's going to be just lots of hope and change," and then they have the Republicans come in, "There's no hope and change," I'll blow my head off. Is there going to be anything new here, anything worth listening to tonight?
Well, you know, most of this speech, we're told, is going to be on the economy. So he's going to have to get specific in the 45 minutes about what the administration is going to do with the banks. He's going to have to get specific on some of the economic decision the administration is going to make, but it's not going to be the traditional laundry list. At least that's what we're told right now.
Okay.
That said, don't expect a lot of foreign policy in this one.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about disenfranchisement over in Great Britain. Police say that they fear, quote, a summer of rage as people are angry and they take it to the streets. On Friday's program, we war-game different scenarios for the future. Not predictions of what will happen, but different things that could happen in this country and around the world and how it will affect you. I didn't do this program to scare anybody. We just have to start thinking out of the box. I mean, the White House, the military, the intelligence community, they do war games to figure out what to do in case of a worst-case scenario. Why shouldn't you be able to do that? One of the scenarios is the Bubba effect, that anybody who's in the military knows exactly what that is. You probably haven't heard it. What it is where people who are already disenfranchised by the government, something, by the way, that in the latest poll I've seen has jumped, I believe, 20 points since June. I don't trust the government. It's about 50% now. They see the government as violating the Constitution, and they will see themselves as defenders of the Constitution. Not a good mix. Then they take matters into their own hands. On Friday, I asked two of my guests, Michael Scheuer, he's a 22-year CIA veteran, and Tim Strong, retired Command Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army. I said, what do you do about this? How do you diffuse this, Michael, or how long even do we have before this becomes a crazy real scenario?
Well, I don't think you'd want to diffuse it, Glenn. We've had a 40-minute program so far. And all of the problems we've talked about in one way or another are the result of the American government either overspending or overreaching.
Okay. Tim Strong, he's retired Command Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army. He went on to mention, he said, underneath, Civil War, I'm afraid it's going to be even worse. Tim Strong is back with us. What did you mean by that? Do you remember saying that or mouthing that, Tim?
Hey, Glenn, good evening. Hey, again, congratulations on being the #1 slot there at 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
Puts a new different thing on 5 o'clock. Hey, you know, when we talked about that, you know, you look historically back, we've got to be very cautious to ensure that we educate people. You know, the bubble effect, let's give some clarity to that first, Glenn. When we talk about the bubble effect in our terms, you know, we're talking about anybody, as you talked about, that has a history in the military, to the former president who was also called Bubba. So we've got a Rhodes Scholar down to people that have paid the price, have done their deed, and gone home. And, you know, they're the individuals that just through, they are not only disenfranchised, they've basically become disengaged, because they're sort of waiting to see what the government's going to do, both locally, state, and those type of areas. So they're drawing caution to the unthinkable more than they are scrutinizing or speculating. If that, so where do we go with the summer age scenario? Where does that go in terms of a relationship with America? 9/11 was unthinkable, the stock market was unthinkable, so it's truly something that you need to have an idea about to make sure that you're prepared for.
Look, you know what, there were some listeners of mine on the radio show. I said 2 years ago, I said stock market's going to be about 7,500 points. I think it was around 14,000 when I said we're looking at a nightmare scenario. Well, here we are, about 7,500. Those people who chose to put their heads in the sand and say, oh, you're a fearmonger, whatever, that's fine, whatever. Others took action and, you know, took their money or protected their money as they started to see the signs of the sliding down. I hope to God none of this happens, but you've got several different scenarios. Tell me a little bit about, you know, there's these tea parties that are going on all over. I think taxes are going to be a point, but they're not a point right now. You've got more problems with people, you know, for instance, gun laws being enacted, or with the thing that Eric Holder said last week. Do we have the SOT from Eric Holder? Listen to this.
Though this nation has proudly thought of itself as a ethnic melting pot, in things racial, we have always been, and we, I believe, continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards.
I find that offensive. So offensive. We're cowards.
Well, Glenn, I think it probably had some interesting discussions over the dinner table that night outside the media realm as well. And I think, you know, when you're in a position of responsibility like that, making a comment like that, a better choice of words could have been used. When we talk about the melting pot from my 28 years of service, I have to reflect to the great job of what the Department of Defense is doing in regards to equal opportunity, integration, tolerance, and stuff like that. We do a phenomenal job in educating all soldiers from walks of life, sailors, airmen, and Marines, to, you know, to be a combat force, to be a force that understand, respect, and work together. If a role model needs to be portrayed, let's use DOD and what their programs are doing to show that, you know, our nation is based on the people that join our Army. And when our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines separate, they bring that back to their hometown and they educate their communities.
You know what?
So we should applaud our service members for that.
You know what, Tim, and I don't believe I'm alone in this. I have more respect for the servicemen and women in our country. They actually give me hope, and I think it's because our military they're based on the principles that are the founding documents. They are there to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and they know it, and they live it every day. Tim, thank you very much. You know, I just want to, we've been talking about principles and values of the show, during the show, and if you're a new listener or new viewer, you may not know what that means, but we've listed all of these principles and these values. There's 9 principles and 12 values to remember. The #1 value, #1 is honesty. You know, we need to have a government that is honest and transparent with the people, and we need to be that way as well. Take note of the 9th principle. The government works for me. I don't answer to them. They answer to me. You can check out all 9 of these principles and the 12 values at foxnews.com/Glenn Beck, and don't miss our special on Friday, March 13th. You're really going to want to see this and have some friends with you as well. Now, you may not have noticed this, but apparently some people say the media is slightly biased, especially when it comes to Sarah Palin. Oh, tell me it's not so. They will praise President Obama for doing the same thing they criticized Bush for, like upping the troops overseas. Details next. All right, former Republican vice presidential candidate and just one hot grandma. I'm just saying, Sarah, I'm in your corner. Hammered by the mainstream liberal media relentlessly during the campaign. Now she's firing back in a new documentary called Media Malpractice: How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. John Ziegler's latest film. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Glenn. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so before we get to Sarah Palin,
yes.
Can you give me, Gresh, can you give me what Harry Reid and what's her face, you know, crazy woman, Nancy Pelosi, said today about Barack Obama in the speech tonight?
It was at a press bill, and Pelosi and Majority Leader Reid lavished praise on the president as, quote, amazing person, unquote, who has a, quote, great gift, unquote, is extraordinarily brilliant, unquote, and will deliver an electric speech tonight.
Wow.
He's extraordinarily brilliant. George Bush, he's an idiot. But Obama's extraordinarily brilliant.
Of course he is.
And it's and that, I'm surprised that's come from somebody in their own party instead of just somebody in, like, you know, on NBC.
Well, there's hard to tell the difference these days, especially on MSNBC, for sure. And NBC as well, based upon what I found in my documentary.
Right. What did you find?
Well, what I found was that, Glenn, as bad as everyone in your audience thinks that it was in the 2008 election, it was exponentially worse. And the reason why I say that is because we went into great detail, into specific episodes, many involving the primary season, where Barack Obama was given far better treatment than Hillary Clinton, and then very specifically with our exclusive interview with Governor Palin, into many of these misconceptions that the media created about things that Sarah Palin allegedly said or allegedly did, which were either half or complete falsehoods that destroyed her credibility with independent voters and, I believe, greatly impacted the election. This was a grave injustice. This was unprecedented. This was dangerous. This is really not even about President Obama. This is about the nature of the media coverage, which was unbelievably unfair.
Let me play the Norah. Can you play the Norah O'Donnell clip here? This is you with Norah O'Donnell.
Can I set this up a little bit? Because I was on the Today Show on Monday, and I find this to be an amazing episode, Glenn. So the Today Show has the exclusive on the rest of the Sarah Palin interview that's not yet been released until the DVD came out on Monday. And who do they choose? Who do they choose at NBC News to do the story introing my interview with Matt Lauer? A woman who just 3 weeks ago on air said that Sarah Palin had called Barack Obama a terrorist. Now, there would have been a day not too long ago that was a fireable offense. At the very least, that should end any possibility that you're doing any stories on Sarah Palin, especially involving this interview. And a month ago, Norah O'Donnell and I had an on-air confrontation, let's just say, didn't go very well. So then I get asked to go on MSNBC with Norah O'Donnell, and hilarity ensues.
Right. He's a little over the top with his passion. I don't know where he gets that. Okay, here it is.
You just said, and I quote, SNL is thought to be a news agency. Do you want to stand by that?
But the reality is that people are stupid, and a lot of people do think that Bill Maher or Jon Stewart or the Colbert Report or SNL actually is real news information. News is completely disintegrated in this day and age, and this network is a prime example of that.
We are equal opportunity when it comes to Democrats or Republicans. We play the SNL clips that make fun of them here on
Really?
Yeah. Really?
There was actually a study done on that, Glenn, and that was a flat-out lie. And by the way, we missed the part where I said that she should have been fired, and she was a little taken back by that. I also thanked her for starring me on my next film, Media Malpractice 2, the sequel, for her setup in the Today Show.
You know, okay, we have to take a break. I want to come back. I want to talk to you a little bit about your interview with Sarah Palin in the film, and I also want to talk to you about the danger of all of this.
Absolutely.
Why this matters, because I don't care about anybody or what SNL or anybody else is doing, but it does actually matter. We'll do that next.
You know that this is a lie, that she's some sort of an idiot or a moron.
No. But that's an extreme statement.
Tell America right now
that's an extreme statement. I'm just asking you.
Is it not a lie that she's an idiot? You know it, Matt.
Of course it's a lie.
Of course it's a lie, but you didn't hear that anywhere. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I meet that think that, oh, Sarah Palin, she's just a moron. She ain't anything like it.
The media made sure everyone in America knew Barack Obama wasn't a Muslim. They went proactive on that, right? Because it was untrue.
Right.
Well, Matt Lauer knows that Sarah Palin is not an idiot. She's been in her home just like I have been, and he was going to let that one go. Just, you know, let the perception stay. It's incorrect.
You went in the documentary, and give me the name, because the name of the documentary is like 400 words long.
It's just media malpractice. Go to howobamagotElected.com.
All right, okay.
Media malpractice. HowobamagotElected.com is the website.
Okay. So, but you went up and you spent time with Sarah Palin, and she kind of let things rip.
Well, she felt comfortable finally telling the truth about the campaign, setting the record straight. And what has really burned me is that people in the news media, the very same media that destroyed her during the campaign, now try to claim that this interview is whiny. This interview is not whiny. The entire interview is available on the DVD we released yesterday. People will see an entirely new Sarah Palin fighting for herself, standing up for what is right, and setting the record straight on a whole bunch of misconceptions.
Can we play just a little bit of this? Can we play a little bit of this with Sarah Palin?
Along the trail, this amazement on my part that they didn't take my word for it. When I would express my opinion, they would seem to want to ask a question to twist what I had just said, turn it into... Obviously, something big took place in the media and in mainstream media deciding we're going to seek and we're going to destroy this candidacy of Sarah Palin's because of what it is that she represents.
I believe that. I actually think it wasn't just the media. I think it was the Republican Party as well. I think the Republican Party is afraid of her.
Well, there are certainly elements of the Republican Party that are supportive of other potential 2012 candidates that wanted to see her torpedoed.
Well, but also the power structure in Washington. They like the game they're playing.
You're exactly right. She's not establishment, which is why people love her, and why I hope people will check out the documentary to find out the real truth about her.
Where can you find that again?
I think it's howobamagotElected.com.
He is such a... He's a cash whore. That's all he is.
Hey, if you put your life on the line like I have for this, you do the same.
I know. You actually risk everything you have.
Everything
financially.
and more.
The time to do that is not on the edge of a depression. Just say.
Hey, I didn't say I was that smart.
All right. Good to see you.
Thank you, Glenn.
We'll see you again. My final thoughts on the program next. We've been sending in photos. People have been sending them in from all over the country to WeSurroundThem@foxnews.com. These are just ordinary people just like you that believe in the 9 principles and the 12 values that we've been talking about in the show tonight and over the last few days, and that we'll be really introducing to you on March 13th on a special. I have to tell you that this last weekend I said to my wife, I came home and I was so frustrated, and I said, honey, I just need, she said, you need exercise. And I said, shh. I said, actually, what I need is I need a stress relief, and I need to know that I'm not alone. I need to know that there are other people. So my wife and I, we decided that we're just going to have a few friends over once a week, and we're going to read some things. We're going to talk about the news of the day. I know. Don't you want to be invited over to my house? We're going to have kind of like a study group, really, of some of the founding principles and the different things that are going on, because I have a lot of friends that are just as frustrated as I am, and I know we can fix it if we come together and we reunite with values and principles, the principles that made us what we are. Well, I was going to say today, but I don't know if we want to get there. The principles that made America great and will make